There was a point in this game, Zach, that the Titans were without 8 of their 11 regular defensive starters. It was easier to name the guys that were still out there than the guys that were out with injuries at one point. You had Elijah Molden go down. You had David Long go down. No Christian Fulton, Dupree, Simmons. Like I said, so many guys down, and yet the defense has been working because they've been winning up front. They've been bringing pressure. They had 6 sacks as a unit. Rashad Weaver, DeMarcus Walker, Mario Edwards Jr., even Dylan Cole got in on the action. Naquan Jones. All of these guys continue to show up and answer the bell when their number is called. So this next man up mentality that Mike Vrabel seems to preach and that these guys seem to talk about, this group really does embrace. And I am continuously impressed with their depth, with their resiliency. They just kept on coming. No matter how banged up they were, no matter how much you thought the play might be over, they kept coming after Russell Wilson. And they made adjustments. I said earlier in the week, they needed to make adjustments to keep contain on the opposing mobile quarterbacks. They did that very, very well yesterday. This is my biggest positive because this plays, this travels, and this can win you playoff football games. This amount of depth and this amount of pressure up front. That was my overwhelming takeaway for how good this Titans defense really can be.
Yeah, and, that was a huge part. When you talk about Weaver, he was thrown into this position after Landry went down. He's obviously happy that he's getting to play, right? But he was going to be a backup, a role player, a guy that comes in spurts in between Bud Dupree and Harold Landry, and the season just hasn't worked out like that. Landry hadn't played a single snap because of the ACL, and Bud Dupree has been on again, off again with his hip, and he's off again now. But Rashad, I thought Weaver, if you look at the statistics, Weaver was tied with Mario Edwards Jr. for those 4 quarterback hits. I felt like Russell Wilson, you talk about not being comfortable. Russell Wilson was not comfortable at all yesterday. He could not plant his feet. He couldn't throw downfield. He was constantly on the move. He was constantly running away. And then I felt like every time Wilson turned, there was another Titan there. That I think was the most impressive thing as kind of doubling down on what you were saying. And Weaver has been a big part of this defense, in spots where they need guys like that to step up when injuries have occurred. So I think that's good. Let's go to the chat real quick and ask, what was the best thing from the Titans win yesterday against the Broncos, 17-10? And let's see, we got a ton of comments going in. Let's see. T-Von says, NWI flea flicker. Steven goes flea flicker. The passing game had some life from CL Jackson. NWI coming there. On YouTube, Sir Ken says defense has been the story of the Titans all season. Jermel, flea flicker. Ryan coming back was the best part. Talk about Tannehill's return. Defensive depth from Eddie. Lee Grant says Todd Downing. I think he's waiting for the next segment, not this segment. John McDaniel says the passing game was finally born. Stonehouse and NWI. So Ray brings up Stonehouse. The defensive depth stepping up. Home crowd came through from G-Man. Special teams from Jody. And here, I want to stop right here. Sam, it kind of took me a second to realize, Robert Woods wasn't back returning punts like he was, right? Yeah. So they did a little bit of a switch up there.
Yeah, we saw CJ Board got elevated like really the morning of the game when we first kind of saw some of these moves that they made. Bringing up Treylon Burks and Elijah Molden as well. And nobody really knew what that was going to look like. But Chris Conley was inactive. CJ Board was active. And then I was sitting with Teron Davenport of ESPN down in the Newswell over by the Titans end zone for pregame warmups. And they introduced CJ Board as the returners. And he comes out, he's taking punt return reps. We kind of looked at each other. Are they going to have this guy returning punts today? And all things considered, I thought CJ Board did a pretty strong job, good effort in his first game as a Titan, given where the punt return position has been. So special teams was chaotic as well, because also Randy Bullock with a pregame injury and not knowing what that was going to look like and having to bring Ryan Stonehouse out on kickoffs in the second half. Mike Vrabel says Bullock was unavailable in the second half. They let Ryan Tannehill know like halfway through the game, hey, you might have to hold at some point today because Malik Willis has never held before. Ryan Stonehouse
Well,
is
he
your
can't hold
regular
on to
holder.
the ball either.
Yeah, right. Ryan Stonehouse is your regular holder. He's got a kick. Your backup quarterback is usually the next guy up, but he doesn't know how to hold. So the starting quarterback might have to be the holder. That was an interesting situation. So yeah, some chaos on special teams, but overall they prevailed and had a pretty strong effort as a group.